You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Somebody there?
Hello, once again, for another journey into the unexplored, the unexplained Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson.
And what are we going to unearth today, Verna?
Well, we're actually going to go into the music world. We've gone into the world of literature. We've gone into film and TV, where we talk about all of those paranormal influences on film, TV, and literature. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to go into the music world because, as you know, rock and roll is very connected with the occult. A lot of it is.
A lot of band members are attracted to the occult.
They are. And I have a music background. So this interests me because I don't think we've covered this topic before. And I think a lot of it will surprise a lot of people.
I would say the closest we've come before is the Hollywood community, actors and actresses,
and actresses,
being attracted to the occult, but never the music world. So this will be an interesting
this will be good
journey.
And so if you're a music fan and you want to find out how some of your favorite groups are connected to the occult, and if there's actually been a curse or a story connected to them, this is the episode to listen to.
That's it.
So we're going to go ahead and go straight into it here. One of the most notorious supposed curses that seem to have hung over a popular group is Fleetwood Mac. The band got its start in London in 1967 as a blues band. They're well known for their smash hit in 1977 album Rumors, which sold over 40 million copies and remained in the U.S. top singles chart for 31 straight weeks. And it's the 8th best-selling album of all time. And anyway, the group's become rather known over the years for what they call a string of bad fortune that seems to target all of their guitarists. And the first guitarist to suffer from the curse, was the one who actually started the band in the first place. This was Peter Green. He already had a history of substance abuse, and in particular LSD. And he was well known for his acid usage and his mental instability and odd behavior. And he started growing a beard. He was wearing flowing robes, and he was going around proclaiming that he was Jesus, as well as constantly suggesting that the band give away their earnings to charity. So things came to a head when in March of 1970 he was at a party at a commune in Munich, Germany, and he overdosed on a batch of bad LSD, giving him a profoundly bad trip in which he claimed to see visions of angels. And after his unfortunate episode, his mental health diminished dramatically. He left the group, and he was eventually diagnosed with severe schizophrenia, which would cause him to be institutionalized.
I had no idea. I never knew any of that about the Fleetwood Mac.
I never either. That's really sad.
Wow.
Yeah. He would spend years moving between mental institutions and undergoing electroshock therapy. And those who went to see him were shocked to find out that he was washed out, dazed, and decrepit. and a decrepit shell of the great guitar hero that he once been. And after he was released, he found odd jobs, even working as a gravedigger, but his bizarre behavior didn't stop. In one incident in 1977, Green stormed into the home of the band's accountant David Simmons and threatened him with a shotgun because he was disgruntled that he was still receiving royalty checks. Wow, that's
schizophrenia for you.
Wow, really? That you were? Wouldn't you be glad to be receiving royalty checks?
Seriously.
Okay. In 1995, he would return to music by founding the band, the Splinter Group, but he never did achieve any of the fame or glory that he once enjoyed with Fleetwood Mac, and he was mostly forgotten. Just regulated to being known in music history.
Fleetwood Mac's slide guitarist Jeremy Spencer would also become embroiled in a weird incident as well. Spencer, who despite his wild and flamboyant demeanor on stage, was actually deeply religious. He overdosed on a mescaline during a tour of Los Angeles in 1971 and would never be the same again. At one point, he apparently casually told the other band members he was going off to a bookstore to buy a magazine, and the next time anyone saw him again, he was part of a strange cult called the Children of God, which had been formed in the 1960s by the self-proclaimed prophet David Berg.
I've heard of them.
Have you? Have you joined?
No, but I heard of them, and there was actually a film that Children of God made, where they're talking about it, and they're singing, and they're doing some kind of song thing.
Although roughly based on Christianity, the Children of God deviated wildly in that they promoted free love and open sex, notoriously including underage girls. Spencer would remain with the cult and would never come back, although he was continued to make music and from as recently as 2006 released the album Precious Little, 2012's Bend in the Road, and the 2014 album Coventry Blues. Now next to join the ranks of the cursed guitarist of Fleetwood Mac was Danny Kirwan, who in 1972 had a strange meltdown during a U.S. tour. Kirwan allegedly became inexplicably and irrationally furious while trying to tune a guitar, after which he began smashing and headbutting the walls and throwing his guitar into a mirror, and after that he bizarrely climbed down into the audience and began ruthlessly taunting and heckling the band from the crowd as they awkwardly tried to keep the show going without him.
That's some meltdown.
It is. Although Kirwan had had a history of rather odd behavior and rampant drug and alcohol abuse, this incident would be the last straw. He was kicked out of the group and would go on to live the rest of his life destitute and homeless after spending time in a mental institution.
Ouch. The curse then lay in wait until 2012, and it would come back dramatically. In January of 2012, a former Fleetwood Mac guitarist, Bob Weston, then 64, and he was most famous for having an affair with drummer Mick Fleetwood's wife in the 1970s. He was found dead in his North London flat of an apparent brain hemorrhage. And then later that year, tragedy struck from another former guitarist from the band, Bob Welsh. He was suffering from complications from spinal cord surgery, and he was told that that he would never walk again. So he was very despondent, and he didn't want to burden his wife. He wrote out a suicide note and killed himself with a deadly gunshot to the chest. The only Fleetwood Mac guitarist who hasn't been plagued by death and misfortune seems to be the frontman Lindsey Buckingham, although and hopefully he never will be.
Actually, he was kicked out of the band twice, and he was just recently kicked out again.
Oh, well.
So
Anthony thought of one, didn't he?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's still there, I guess.
Well, thank you, Anthony.
A footnote.
Okay. Another sinister curse for another rock band that's very well known is from Led Zeppelin, and I've been hearing about this one for years, especially associated with Jimmy Page.
I was surprised by this one. I didn't know this one.
Yeah. Of course, the band formed in 1968 and disbanded in 1980, and they're one of the most successful rock bands in history. And most of the supposed curse, of course, has its roots in Jimmy Page's obsession with the occult, and in particular with Aleister Crowley, whom he deemed a genius. Now, Page was apparently quite open and extravagant with his occult interests. He owned an occult bookshop and publishing house, especially, and he was participating in the making of occult films, owing a vast trove of Aleister Crowley paraphernalia, and even buying Crowley's own castle on Loch Ness, Scotland, called a Bullskin House.
And by the way, Crowley himself was an occultist, an English occultist from the late 1800s.
He was an English occultist in the late 1800s, and he started the tradition of Thelema. And just a side note here, everybody, a couple of years ago, we actually had some real practitioners who practiced the cult of Thelema on our show. And if you want to go ahead and look in our archives, just put in Ecto portal, put in the words Thelema, and it'll turn up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the connection to the occult generated a lot of rumors, such as the well-known supposed backward message hidden in the group's song "Stairway to Heaven."
I didn't know there was one.
I didn't know there was a backwards message either. You had to really listen to it closely to hear that. But anyway, the most persistent curse that is said to have haunted the group, the legend goes that Page somehow convinced the rest of the group that all of his mystic beliefs were real, and managed to get them to engage in an arcane ritual with the purpose of selling their souls to the devil to gain stardom.
Okay, so that's interesting that was his goal.
I don't know if that was really his goal. I think that's kind of somebody who doesn't understand Thelema saying that, because Thelema doesn't even worship the devil. I think he just wanted a Thelemic ritual, probably to help the group along, and probably someone who didn't understand it think, they're selling their souls to the devil.
Some of these musicians take parts of what they want that are cool and popular, Satanism, Thelema. They take what they think it is and they use it for their own purpose.
Well,
not
that's
necessarily
true.
Representing what it really stands for.
That could be true. The only thing I was trying to point out, though, is that if he was an actual real practitioner and he understood it, I'm sure it was a little bit different than the way this is being described. But you have a point too. Anyway, back to the story. It said that this was the point that was to mark the beginning of a streak of bad luck.
A curse.
A curse, yeah. And beginning in 1975, when lead singer and lyricist Robert Plant was driving along with his wife and 3 children when they were involved in a terrifying car accident, literally driving off a cliff that left his wife and 2 kids seriously injured and shattered his ankle and elbow, causing the cancellation of the band's 1975 physical graffiti tour. And oddly, Plant's 4-year-old daughter Scarlett was completely untouched and uninjured in the terrible accident, which, yeah, thank goodness. Ooh, that's awful.
I know.
Yeah.
When Plant was back on his feet, the band tried to get their 1977 North American tour rolling along. They were besieged by a myriad of problems. Violent fans revolted, they rioted, they crashed the event, and when there were not enough tickets to go around, resulting in 19 arrests and 50 people were injured, Plant got sick to the point that he could barely play, and on top of all of this, manager Peter Grant and John Bonham got into an altercation with a member of the concert promoter Bill Graham's staff and practically beat him to death.
Yikes.
Among the various other examples of misfortune were a thunderstorm, numerous conflicts with the band itself, and all things considered, it's amazing that any of the shows went ahead as scheduled at all. The purported curse would rear its head again during the concert in the most sinister of ways when Plant's 5-year-old son, Carrick, died after contracting a mysterious stomach virus, cutting short the band's concert and signaling the beginning of the end of the days for the group. In 1980, drummer John Bonham then went on an epic all-day drinking binge, which saw him pass out and die after choking on his own vomit.
Yikes.
In the wake of his tragic death, the once great Led Zeppelin band disbanded. Indeed, the only member of Led Zeppelin who seemed to have remained relatively unscathed by the curse was bassist and guitarist John Paul Jones, who is rumored to have had no part in the dark pact that brought all of this upon them.
Yeah, he was the only one that didn't take part in the ritual.
Isn't that interesting, though?
That is interesting.
Only one who didn't take
the only
part.
one. Yeah.
And maybe, remember when I said my theory about they use it for their own purposes?
Yes,
Maybe the reason they had problems is they used it for the wrong reasons, for their own purposes.
It could have been. They were young, they were idealistic. Maybe they used it for their own purpose. We don't know. We don't know unless we talk to Jimmy Page.
It's interesting that he was left unscathed.
It is interesting, and actually I'd like to have Jimmy Page on this show and talk to him and see what he has to say about it. So, interesting enough, it's been said that not only was Led Zeppelin cursed, but that Page lashed out to curse another group for disrespecting his hero, Aleister Crowley. A band of Essex rockers called Eddie and the Hot Rods were also fascinated and influenced by Crowley and decided to feature Crowley on their cover for their chart-topping 1977 single, Do Anything You Want to Do. The problem was that instead of just simply plastering a picture of Crowley on the cover, their manager Ed Hollis insisted on altering the photo so that Crowley was sporting a pair of comic Mickey Mouse ears. And this Plant got angry about that, and he placed a curse. Wait a minute, not Plant. Page got angry about it, and he placed a curse on the upcoming group, and they brought all kinds of negative effects on them. Supposedly, as a result of this curse, Eddie and the Hot Rods were dropped by their label. Their manager became hopelessly addicted to heroin, and they lost their creative drive, and they never did achieve their potential, losing any hope that they would ever reach the charts again. And the band's bassist said of this curse, weird shit happened after that. A lot of people said we shouldn't have fucked about with Crowley. That's what the band's bassist said about it.
The story about cursed musicians couldn't be complete without mentioning the late, great John Lennon and the curse he allegedly bore. In John Lennon's particular case, the whole dark ordeal seemed to hover around the number 9. The list of weird cases of synchronicity between Lennon and the number 9 is pretty long. For starters, John Lennon was born October 9th, 1961. His first home was 9 Newcastle Road, Wavertree, Liverpool, with the 3 main words of the address each having 9 letters. His band, the Beatles, first appeared at the Cavern Club on February 9th, 1961, and were later pushed into stardom on November 9th, 1961, when they were discovered by their manager Brian Epstein, after which they would go on to perform on the famous Ed Sullivan Show on November 9th, 1966. Lennon would have a child with Yoko Ono, Sean Lennon, who was born on October 9th, 1975. In John Lennon's career, in his solo career that is, his 1974 album Walls and Bridges was also his 9th album, featured a song called Number 9 Dream, which was released in September, the 9th month of the year, and features on its cover an illustration of a footballer with the number 9 printed on his back. The single of the song debuted at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US, and curiously, the 2 albums released before and after Walls and Bridges were Mind Games and Rock and Roll, both of which have 9 letters. It's weird, but things get menacing when Lennon left the Beatles after spending 9 years together. On December 8th, 1980, which was actually December 9th in Lennon's hometown of Liverpool, he was shot and killed by a lone gunman, Mark David Chapman. This would not even be the end of the curse of 9 that seems to have been orbiting around him. Afterwards, after the shooting, Lennon was taken to Roosevelt Hospital, which is located on 9th Avenue, Manhattan. And both the words Roosevelt and Manhattan, you guessed it, have 9 letters. John Lennon was apparently well aware of how the number 9 seemed to follow around and haunt him, thinking it had some deep numerological significance, but it is unclear if this was all just a spooky series of extreme coincidences, or if there is something more to it all. Curiously, one of Lennon's closest friends, a successful musician in his own right, seems to have also carried a curse. It was singer-songwriter Harry Nilsson, who was a good friend and a frequent collaborator with Lennon, enjoyed some amount of fame and success in the late 60s, early 70s with songs like Everybody's Talkin', Without You, Coconut, and Jump Into the Fire, all hits at the time. And his album Pussycats was produced by Lennon. Nilsson's curse didn't affect him directly unless you call rampant, unrepentant alcoholism a curse. I guess it could be. In 1971, Nilsson covered a song by the relatively minor group at the time, Badfinger, called Without You. The cover song became a runaway hit and music sensation, but while this was great for Nilsson, things with Badfinger were not going nearly as well, earning very little royalty payment for the Nilsson cover of their own song. They fell on hard times and would be plagued by a series of odd deaths within their ranks. Badfinger singer-songwriter and guitarist Pete Ham hung himself in his own garage, after which bassist Tom Evans would follow suit and hang himself as well. And in 2005, the band's drummer, Michael Gibbons, would die in his sleep at the age of 56.
So the curse would continue to spread out its claws into others who had any connection to Nielsen. In July of 1974, the American singer and actress Cass Elliot was borrowing Nielsen's small one-bedroom Mayfair flat right after her successful performance at the Palladium, where she dropped dead of heart failure at the age of 32. Then in 1978, Keith Moon also died at the age of 32 in the very same flat on the very same bed after an overdose of Hemivrim tablets.
Which they prescribed for him for combating alcohol withdrawal symptoms. He took a total of 32 tablets, when 6 would have been enough to kill him. Nielsen would go on to die of heart failure on January 15, 1994, although at the age of 52.
That's
There's certainly a dark allure for rock stars and curses, though. It's interesting. I had no idea that Cass Elliot and Keith Moon died in the same flat on the same bed.
That's crazy.
I'd never ever heard
And
that.
at the same age, 32. Age 32.
How weird is
That's
that?
very young. That's too young.
Now, whether that was because of their association with Nielsen, I don't know. I don't know if that's really a curse or just people connecting the dots.
That's
Hard to say.
yeah, it's hard to say. It's just crazy.
Now, what do you think of John Lennon and his nines? Do you think it's anything to numerology?
I do, but I don't think it was bad luck though, because 9 is actually a very positive and good number in numerology. I mean, in numerology, 9 is the number of it's the number of the humanitarian, where you're doing stuff for the masses and you're doing a service. It's right before number 10. Number 10 is completion. Number 9 is getting right into that
But
completion.
people would also think Holy Trinity.
Holy Trinity. What do you mean?
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. A lot of people associate 3 with the Holy Trinity.
They do. Yeah, that's
Which
true.
I don't think is a bad thing, I guess.
No, not at all. No, but I mean,
I don't know if it really had any effect on his career, because he did find his whole life. He unfortunately got shot.
unfortunately, but the way I associate the numerology part is that, you know, a lot of our names, our addresses, and our birth dates have a lot of numerology associated with it, and sometimes they can run into patterns, and the 9 just seems to be another one of those patterns. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just what it is, and it's the way his road path was
There's
going.
3 sets of 3 and a 9.
Right. So to me, it just talked about what his road path was going. It doesn't mean it was good or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, there was one part of this that we didn't cover about Led Zeppelin, was about that film that Page was helping Kenneth Anger with.
Right.
And apparently him and Kenneth Anger
Cult
got
film?
into, this occult film. I think, wasn't it about Crowley?
I don't remember. I think.
Yeah, it was an occult film. I wasn't sure if it was about Crowley, but Kenneth, he was helping out Kenneth Anger with this film, and apparently they got into an argument, and Kenneth Anger supposedly told people that he was that he cursed Page and
Page or Zeppelin?
Page. Well,
I thought he cursed Zeppelin, the whole band.
he could have. I thought it was Page, but it could have been the whole group.
Obviously, the effects happened to all of them. So I
It
guess
happened to all of them,
He did
so-
curse Page and Zeppelin.
And if Kenneth Anger is alive and he's listening to this, this is just something we heard. We don't really know if this is wrong and it's misinformation. We apologize, but it does go with the subject, and it deserves a mention. So I mean, you know, I do feel that, of course, with drug use comes mental instability.
Well, what do you think about, this is a good show to bring this subject of this
Yeah,
question.
right.
The curse of the 28-year-old rock star that dies. Jim Morrison,
Oh, right.
Janis Joplin,
Kurt Cobain.
Yes. Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix. Yep.
The 28 Club.
The 28 Club, or 27 Club, rather.
Is it 27?
No, it's 27. Yeah,
Okay.
they all died at age
Isn't
27.
that weird? That is a little weird.
That is a little weird. But then
It's not really a curse.
I wouldn't call it a curse, but it's a weird pattern. But then you think about it, if they got into music really early in their lives,
Reckless with drug abuse.
and they're reckless with drug abuse, but by the time they're getting older, things usually come to a head. Of course, we all don't know. Everybody's case is different.
Yeah.
But
I guess in a way it's a curse. It's a curse of behavior, a pattern.
right.
It's just odd that all of those people that famous, right when it happened to each one of them,
Right. were dead, and from different reasons. Now, were most of it had to do with drug overdose, or most of it was, yeah.
Kurt Cobain obviously got shot, but they're saying was he high on drugs and therefore he shot himself?
Oh, right. So his was slightly different than the others.
Still drug-induced.
It wasn't an it was drug induced, but it wasn't an overdose like the others.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's all sad. I mean, I feel when it comes to a curse, actually, it could also be stuff you're carrying around, habits that you do, like drugs, alcohol.
Drugs may be
part of
used
it
to inhibit, to have fun, to extend your mind and your situation and help you enhance life. But I think after a while you're using it as an escape, and it does go down a dark path.
Right.
And I think every one of those people experimented, had fun with it, and then relied on it, and then they went down the dark path because they never got off of it.
Right, because you're looking outside of yourself rather than within yourself to be able to find that place. And
Well, it's a good escape.
It's a good
And
escape,
if you have
yeah.
fame, money, responsibility pressures of
Yes,
all of these bands
yeah.
and these musicians, and you have to keep delivering over and over again performance, product, appearances, interviews, fame, the pressure of fame. They turned to drugs. The drugs then took a dark turn, and every one of them went too far.
Right, and then sometimes, a lot of stuff can sort of follow that. Like, take for example, somebody who's mentally unstable, who's not mentally stable, and they're starting to and they're starting to do erratic behaviors, and they're trying to get back on their career, and they don't really have a pattern to follow. They're not really sure how to get back on track and live a balanced life. It's kind of hard.
I'm just thinking about other celebrities, musicians, and weird things like the Beatles and Paul is dead. The rumor that on Sgt. Pepper that Paul was actually died, and that they replaced him somehow with someone else, and that there was Paul is dead. If you play what song was it they play backwards? Do you remember?
Oh, God, I forgot.
It's one of the songs where you play it backwards. It says Paul is dead.
Oh, right. I forgot it. I forgot which one, but I've heard that one many times before.
And that they replaced him with some other person. It's been actually, Paul McCartney's been dead for years, and this other guy is this other imposter.
Oh, yeah.
Even the Beatles said it was ludicrous. All of them said it was ludicrous, but
they've had weird rumors follow them all their lives.
But I guess the more famous you are, the more weird and wacky rumors are going to follow you as a musician.
Yeah, and people have to, and what gets to me is people have time to think about those things. I mean, Stairway to Heaven supposedly had a backward message. I've never heard it.
I've never heard it either.
But I don't know if it comes through on certain tracks when you're playing.
Amy Winehouse also.
Amy Winehouse,
the 27
yes.
Club.
Yeah, the 27 Club for her.
And
yes, sadly.
Her father claimed to have been haunted by her ghost after her death for a while.
I've heard about that too.
There was activity around him, and he could tell it was her, he said, just by the sounds, the movements, that it was her kind of showing up.
Yes.
It was right after she died, he said it was prominent.
Yes, and then this does not have to do with any particular band or musician, but there's a lot of very heavy metal bands, in a lot of European countries and also the U.S. that heavily follow a lot of cults and traditions, and are very much into ritual and
a lot of them into Satanism too.
Yeah. And sometimes they talk about that weird stuff follows them around too, and some of the shows where a lot of these people.
Cooper ever claimed to have any kind of? I know he had experiences of his own.
Yeah, Alex Cooper has had some. I want to get into that. He actually has done an album called Paranormal. And he's had a lot of occult experience. I've been trying to get Alice on this show, actually.
It's difficult.
It's been difficult, but I've been trying to get him on.
But I know he's had experiences, because that's part of why he does what he does.
Yeah. So...
interesting, though.
It's interesting, and it's interesting because I hear a lot of people who frequent a lot of those shows and who and who also frequent Jim Morrison's grave. They talk about his a lot of weird rituals and stuff that they do over there.
Exactly.
So believe it or not, a lot of the occult and a lot of weird stuff tends to follow rock and roll. It just does.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. And I think it's fueled because when a rock star is interested and gets involved in that stuff,
Yeah.
then when they die, people think, oh, he was there, we're into that. Oh, we should check that out.
Uh-huh.
So it almost inspires others to check it out.
Yes.
And it isn't just rock stars. We've seen Hollywood stars.
Oh yeah,
get into
it follows the Hollywood community
So it
too,
isn't just
the acting
musicians.
and movie industry as
Yep.
well. Yeah, but it all makes for interesting talk and
Exactly.
yeah.
All right, folks. There's another episode of Ecto Portal. And until next week, we're going to say goodbye.
Bye. See you next time.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Ross Bugden.